The growth of unsolicited emails that we call today as spam is closely tied to the evolution of how email works. Even though the first unasked for bulk email advertisement was sent out via APRONET in 1978, it was not until 1994 the first large scale spam distribution happened in Usenet. But something that was then used solely for marketing purposes has become an avenue to exploit uninformed users today. This includes the Nigerian 419 scam, code red worm, and circumvirus infiltration, development of spamming botnets, and more. Spam emails does not only cause discomfort and loss of time, it is one of the main reasons that make security breaches possible for hackers. However, as spammers explored more techniques and technologies to exploit email users, email service providers have kept up with the fight, one upping spammers constantly. But to have control over this fight against spammers, it is important for email administrators like you to be informed about spam protection options provided by user focused email service providers like Zoho Mail to utilize them in order to get your fullest security out of it. So let's get started by discussing the what, how, and why of spam emails before getting into the specifics of the features available in Zoho Mail Admin Console. So let's start with the first, the what. If you strictly analyze the basic characteristics of spam, then you will find these in common. So the first thing is they would not have been requested by the recipient at all. Secondly, they will be of commercial nature. It would be selling a product or asking money for exploitation, get rich quick schemes, anything that expects you to give them money. And lastly, it is always sent in bulk. So these spammers get your email address with variety of technologies using crawlers, sweepers, and a brute force method. But once you click on that spam email, they have conformance of your email address's deliverability. And that means you will now start getting spam emails nonstop. So these characteristics apply to most forms of spam emails, be it product marketing or spreading of Trojan horse emails to get all the information from your laptop or computer, get rich quick schemes, like I said before, or the magical medicine extracted from the depths of Amazon forests. But the ones that extremely affect organization based email addresses are phishing and spoofing, the most deceiving of them all. Phishing is a social engineering technique where spammers disguise themselves to be a legitimate organization and influence their targets to reveal sensitive data like financial information, username and password of their accounts, or even devices. They then use this information to steal from the victim, causing them severe financial ruin. When I say they disguise themselves to be legitimate organizations, I mean that they will create emails with that organization's logo, color palette, font style, and everything to look exactly like the institution they are disguising. Research shows that in recent years, the main focus of phishers has been SaaS companies, which accounted for about 33% of these attacks as victims. But the reason why phishers have such a high success rate defrauding users, apart from all the work that goes into creating fake websites, fake color palettes, fake signatures, it's because of them employing a technique called spoofing. Spoofing coupled with phishing can be highly dangerous for an user to tell apart what is true and what is not. So the question comes, what is email spoofing? Email spoofing is where the spammer would forge a legitimate email address and trick the recipient into believing that the email is from someone it's not from. So, let me give you an example. Imagine an organization named Zilka. Zilka CFO Charles Anderson gets an email that looks completely legitimate. There is not one bit that you could tell apart from his CEO from the email address ceo at zilka.com. So the email reads, transfer $10,000 immediately to the below account with an account detail. Because the requests of this nature are quite rare, Charles decides to check the from address, and the from address is exactly right from what his CEO's from address is. So, assured that the email is right and it's his CEO who's requesting money, the CFO, Charles, immediately approves the transfer and the money goes through. But after some time, he comes to know that the CEO never sent any such emails and he has been a victim of email spoofing. Now, you might wonder, how is it possible for someone to send an email exactly from a from address owned by you or a from address that is not owned by them? Well, to understand this, we will have to go through how email gets transmitted. Let's say you have your email composed and ready to be sent. Just like a letter, your email will also need a from address, a to address, and a return to address. Once you give that information and hit send, Zoho Mail will establish a connection with the secure, it will be a secure TCP connection with the SMTP server of the sender. The SMTP server will then transmit data such as from address to address, the email contents, to the MTA, that is the message transfer agent of the sender server. The MTA will then try to read the to address. You can think of MTA as something similar to that of a postman. The MTA will then check the global DNS to locate the MX records of your two addresses domain. After locating the same, it will contact the recipient's MTA, and from there, the user will be located, and finally, the email will get delivered. In the process, if any of the information can't be found, then the email will bounce back to the sender. So, what does this have to do with email spoofing? Well, if you notice, the SMTP server plays a major role in the delivery of these emails. But because SMTP is a very old protocol, but still considered to be the standard for web mails, there is a major drawback that comes with it. There is no way for an SMTP to authenticate an email address that is added in from or returned to. It allows the spammer to set any email address and username that doesn't belong to them as the from address and the return to address. And if you end up being the recipient of these spoofed emails, then there is a chance for you to become a victim because obviously the differences are not much. For you to know if an email has been spoofed, then you will have to go to your email's header and look at it thoroughly to find out what's going wrong. But there's more to it. What if you end up in the return to address. In that case, you will suddenly find bounce messages or random replies from angry users and unknown senders. Now, this is what we call email backscattering. A reaction if your email address gets spoofed to send email to another different user. Now, getting your email in the from address or the return to address will affect your organization's reputation, which might cause the legitimate emails you send to end up in the spam folder. So, what's the solution? Well, as spammers and scammers come up with newer techniques to exploit highly vulnerable users, email service providers like Zoho Mail have relentlessly worked towards solutions that can fill the drawbacks brought in by SMTP servers. These solutions include SPF, Sender Policy Framework, DKIM, Domain Keys Identified Mail, and DMARC, Domain Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. These protocols help you against phishing, spoofing, and overall spam emails. So let's start with SPF. I'm going to share my screen with you and demonstrate how to add SPF record in your domain's DNS. So please confirm if you can see the screen. So to add SPF records in your domain's DNS, first you need to generate or know what SPF record to add in order to whitelist Zoho Mail. So let's see how to do that. So first, go to the domain section and click on the domain you would like to add SPF to. I would like to add SPF records for this domain zilka.live. So once I go there, I click on the domain and I navigate to email configuration. In that, I will see SPF. After navigating to SPF, you can see that Zoho Mail displays what should be the TXT name and what should be the TXT value. This information you can simply copy paste in your domain's DNS. So let me navigate to my domain's DNS page. My domain is owned by GoDaddy. So I'm navigating to GoDaddy and I go to the DNS of my domain, zilka.live. So once I'm there, I go down and click Add. In here, SPF records are added as TXT records. So I click TXT. Once that's done, I navigate back to admin console and see what's my txt name. I can see that it's ut. So going back here and I give the host as ut. And then I need the txt value. So I navigate back to my admin console and click on this copy icon to copy my SPF record. Now, copying like this allows you to be perfect and not leave out any letters or add space when you drag and copy like this. So, we highly suggest you use the copy button, and that way you can always be sure that you're copying the perfect record perfectly all the time. So I click on the copy button and I navigate back to my DNS. In here, I paste it. After pasting my SPF record, I set my TTL and hit save. Once this is done, I can go back to my Zoho Mail admin console and click Verify SPF record after giving at least 60 to 4 hours 60 minutes to 4 hours of time. So, this is how you add SPF records to your Zoho Mail's SPF record to your domain's DNS. So now I have successfully added the SPF record to my domain's global DNS. So, what does this do? By adding an SPF record to my domain's DNS, I will be providing a public list of users or servers who are the only ones allowed to send emails on behalf of my domain. So, whenever a server receives an email from your domain, it will check whether the sender server has permission to send emails on your domain's behalf or not with the help of SPF record you added, because it will be projected in the global DNS and makes it possible for the receiving server to access it. So let's take a live example. The SPF record that we added for Zoho Mail is VC equal to SPF1 include. You can see that in the slideshow. Now, whenever an email is sent from your domain's address, the receiving server will check if the email came from the server zoho.com or not. If it did not come from Zoho.com server, then the receiving server will consider it to be inauthentic and it will not deliver the email. And if it did come from Zoho.com server, then the receiving server will consider it to be authentic and then the email will be delivered. However, SPF is not without its limitations. While doing an SPF check, it's always validated against the return to address and not the from address of the email that the receiving server had got. This means the SPF result can come up as pass even if the from address is spoofed. And secondly, sometimes an SPF fail does not mean the email will not get delivered to the user. It can end up in the inbox even at times. So while it makes things a bit harder for spammers to get through, it's not sufficient to protect the users either. For all we know, the message could have been tampered during transmission. This is where DKIM comes in. It makes sure that your emails don't get tampered on its way before delivery. So, how does DKIM work? DKIM has two different keys, one public key and one private key. You can easily generate your domain's public key with your preferred DKIM selector in the Zoho Mail's admin console. So let me demonstrate how it works again for you. If you see, we have added SPF record. And now it's time to add the DKM records public key. The private key part will be done by Zoho Mail and you don't have to do anything about it. So the first thing to do is add and click add and give a selector name. So I am going to name my selector as Zoho. And once I give my selector name right here, I'm going to click add. Now I have gotten my DKIM value generated. So all I need to do is go back to my domain's DNS, click add, and select the record type. DKIM records are also added in the TXT format. So I'm going to select TXT and provide the host name. Like I said, it's always good to copy it by clicking the copy button. So I'm clicking the copy button to copy the TXT name and I'm going to paste it here. And once that's done, I'm going back to the admin console and copying the value. And I'll go back to my GoDaddy DNS page and click paste. So there I go. Once done, I set a TTL, and I will hit save. So this is how you can add public key to your domain's DNS. While this process may differ from one domain service provider to another, we have understood that they are more or less similar and only the navigation differs. So if you find it difficult to know where to add these DNS records, then we highly recommend that you go through the help documentation of your domain service provider or contact their support. Now that you have successfully added the generated DKIM signature to your DNS server as a TXT record, you can be done with a public key. So, what happens with a private key? Zoho Mail maintains a securely stored private key that gets signed in all the emails sent via our servers. But within that, we also add an encrypted hash value with all the information that gets uniquely generated to the email's header along with the method of hash generation. The signing of the private key in the email's header automatically happens in the background. Once the email gets sent, the receiving server will first verify if the domain of the sender's email address matches with the domain set in the private signature added to the header. If the domains match, then the signature will be considered valid. Once the signature gets validated, the receiving server will retrieve the public key from your domain's global DNS. The public key will then be used to decrypt the encrypted hash. And while that happens, the receiving server will also compute its own hash. If in the end the two matches, then the email will be considered valid and untouched. While DKIM alone does not prevent spoofing, but when coupled with SPF, it can be a pretty powerful tool. But one of the disadvantages of DKIM is that while it does check the from address, it is possible for the sender to sign a message using a DKIM key linked to a different domain manually. That means with both SPF and DKIM enabled, it is still possible for spammers to bypass these restrictions and cause damage. This is the major reason DMARC, a newer authentication system that takes the best of both SPF and DKIM, was developed. So, what can DMARC do that both SPF and DKIM can't? Well, if you saw with both SPF and DKIM, it was left to your email service providers to decide or take a call on what to do if the message failed to meet the requirement, and also you had no way of knowing what is happening with your domain, or if anybody is spoofing it or using it, you had no idea of knowing. So DMARC makes sure that it takes the best out of both SPF and DKIM. And with the information residing together of SPF and DKIM's pass and fail, you can make a call on how you would like to proceed. You can configure this information using a DMARC report in your domain's global DNS. You can also generate the DMARC report easily by navigating to the Zoho Mail's admin console. So let me quickly do that for you. As you see here, you can see that we have added the DKIM, and the next option you can see that it's DMARC. So if you navigate to the DMARC section, you will see what action needs to be taken when DMARC validation fails. So all this information is with respect to your receiving server. So what you are doing is telling your receiving server what to do. So whenever an email gets sent from your domain, domain's email address, then the receiving server will try to read your DMARC value and will follow the rules that you have set here. So you will be telling what action needs to be taken when DMARC validation fails. So I will be saying that they will have to quarantine the emails. So once that's done, I can give in the information, that is aggregate notification email address, which will send me consolidated reports of both validated and failed DMARC email reports. And once that's done, I can also give in the information of forensic notification email address. So I'm just gonna type this in. Forensic notification email address will send you the reports of only failed DMARC validations. And you can also set what to do if DMARC validation fails for subdomains. And you can set a percentage of how you want your DMARC policy to be applied, because sometimes you might want to gradually do it. So I'll say 20, and you can set an alignment for SPF. If you want relaxed alignment, then both the SPF has to be aligned in a way where the root of the domain and the reply to address has to be aligned. And if it's strict, then the root, not just the root but the overall domain and the reply to email address has to be matched. Similarly for DKIM. So once you set this, you can click generate. So your DMARC uh, your DMARC report will now be possible to be taken, because now you have generated the DMARC record. So just copy this DMARC record, and you can go back to your DNS provider and click add. And in the type, again, it's a TXT record. And in the host, like you see, it's underscore DMARC. I'm going to simply copy it and paste it right here. And for the txt value, I'm going to copy this value again and paste it right here and set a TTL value and hit save. So there I go. I have successfully added my DMARC value in my domain's global DNS. So you can now check the DMARC in your domain's global DNS. So this is how you add the DMARC report. So now let's see how this will help you. One of the things you should note about DMARC is that all the email service providers who support DMARC will send you reports on both successful and failed DMARC validations. Like I said, with the aggregate email address and the forensic email address. Now that you have generated and added this record to your domain's DNS, whenever an email is sent on behalf of your domain, the receiving server will check your domain's DNS and will read your DMARC record for instructions on how to proceed, like I mentioned before. So if you have set the SPF and DKM alignment to strict, and the email that the receiving server got does not match up to the requirements, then the action you set will be followed. So this allows you to have a great deal of control over what emails gets sent through your domain and what emails doesn't get sent through your emails. So, apart from the security benefits that you get via DMARC, there is also a benefit of gaining higher IP reputation and brand protection by configuring DMARC, because you can easily gain the trust of your users or of your recipients. Until now, you might have noticed that we have used these SPF, DKIM, DMARC protocols to make sure our domain's emails don't get spoofed or get used as an avenue to exploit other users. But instead of only using it for outbound emails, you can also use these protocols to control your incoming spam emails. So I'm going to navigate back to the admin console to show you some of the options that are available to help you control spam. So there we go. So if I go into security and compliance section, you will notice that I have something called spam control. In there, I have spam verification. Here, I can use SPF verification, DKIM verification, DMARC verification, and DNSBL verification for emails that I receive in my server or in my organization. Now I can set an action for SPF failure or SPF soft failure. Similarly, I can set an action for DMARC failure. I can permanently reject those emails, and I can say that if the DMARC verification is a failure, then move the emails to spam. This gives me great control in knowing how I can protect my users from spam emails. That could be phishing emails, spoofing emails, or any other emails that could bring in financial ruin on innocent users. So, apart from that, you can also choose how you would like to process your spam. You can put in allowed list, block list. You can set block list patterns. You can also give in a trusted list where if you're 200% sure, then you can say to Zoho Mail, please skip any kind of spam processing on these emails, domains, or IP addresses. And finally, you can also set certain languages and countries as block. You can block those languages and emails from certain countries by going to language based and country based spam processing section. And finally, you can also prevent your domains from getting copied or spoofed using a custom domain by configuring them here. You can simply click add and add the domain you want to make sure no custom domains gets created and sent to the organization. So, and also you can set a delivery action for the same. Similarly, you can also set display name to you can also set display name and associate it with few of the email addresses. And in that case, only the email addresses that are associated with these display names will be able to send emails with that display address to your organization. This way, you can protect the display addresses of your high profile employees or high profile users to make sure their usernames and display names never get misused. And finally, you can also process malwares by going into malware processing and choose which type of content you want to move to the spam folder and which type of HTML tags you would like to move to the spam folder. And that's it. Apart from this, you can go into the security section and have fun with the TFA, allowed IP addresses, suspicious login settings, all to make sure the security of your account also stays tip top. That's it, guys. We have made sure that you know everything that you need to and have provided you avenues to make sure your inboxes stay spam free. So, while understanding how spam work and utilizing these features is essential, it is also crucial to spread this knowledge to your users. And by users, I mean your organization users has to know what goes through. This way, they can understand which emails to interact with and which emails to not interact with. Security and privacy aware, informed users are an inevitable addition in establishing a secure, spam free organization inboxes. So, keeping this in mind, we will be hosting a webinar to help your users know more about spam and how they can use encryption protocols to facilitate themselves and keep themselves informed and secure.